I guess I would say to any founder that's faced that, don't give up until until you have to. Keep plugging away and see if you can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Because we were lucky and we did. Then ultimately, we were able to sell the company to Allstate, who happily operates the company today, and they continue motoring forth. The interesting thing is, it was the web for years and years, red hot. Then it got cold, and I just wonder if we may not experience some of that with AI.
100%.
Hot today, but boy, there's this giant sucking sound as these huge amounts of money are pouring into it. And it requires a growth rate for every single company that I would argue is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So something to keep an eye on.
By the end of this conversation, you'll know what it really takes to lead through hair-raising crises, how to survive 24 hours of cash moments, restructure a 20 billion portfolio under fire, and why hard work and staying true to yourself are the things that carry you when the pressure spikes. Welcome back to the Enhanced AI Partners podcast, the show where leaders share how they scale in fast-changing industries through people, process, and pragmatic AI. I'm Johan Mejia, founder of Enhanced AI Partners. We help fintech and SaaS leaders scale smarter with AI-powered outbound content and workflow automation, so they grow faster without adding headcount. Today's episode is pressure tested. Hair-raising lessons from building, restructuring, and staying true. My guest is Alan Snyder, serial entrepreneur and investor. He has raised over $100 million for an insurance exchange, was in the trenches on the Discovery Card build, where a hidden cash flow flaw nearly sacked the model, and later led the restructuring of an insurance company with 20 billion in high-yield bonds under such intense public pressure, he received death threats and required a state-provided bodyguard. Alan's mantra, hard work counts, be true to yourself, especially when it would be easier not to. Alan, welcome. I'm excited to dive in.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here today.
So tell us about one of those hair-raising moments. What's the single most hair-raising moment that almost brought you to your knees?
Sure. Well, years ago, I had this crazy-ass idea of starting an insurance exchange where we would give people the ability to compare insurance policies head-to-head. And I thought, well, maybe there'd be a business to do that. Of course, sadly, we were very early to that fray, but at the time, the web was hot. And then, as pretty much everybody probably listening knows, the web got cold years later. Now, the hair-raising moment was we had a commitment from a financial institution to invest an additional $10 million, and they started to fade the bet. So we got down to 24 hours of cash in the bank. Needless to say, sweaty palms. And so what did we do? We had to hire bankruptcy counsel in case nothing happened. So we flew to New York, had a pretty intense pillow talk with this financial institution saying, boys, you made a commitment in writing that you were going to invest an additional $10 million. They said, well, but things changed. And I said, guys, you're in the business of making commitments. Wall Street is a game of commitments. And I said, if you don't fund, unhappily for me, I will be forced to tell the world that you did not honor your commitment. Mm-hmm. They left the meeting as we sat there and worried, and came back and said, well, you raised a fair point. We did make the commitment, and instead of 10 million, we'll fund you $5 million tomorrow. So with a great sigh of relief, we then came back to California with $5 million in the bank, and we survived that incredibly terrifying moment. So that was one that was, I would not wish on any founder, because it was brutal. So I guess I would say to any founder that's faced that, don't give up until until you have to. Keep plugging away and see if you can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Because we were lucky and we did. And then ultimately, we were able to sell the company to Allstate, who happily operates the company today. And they continue motoring forth. The interesting thing is, here was the web for years and years, red hot. Then it got cold. And I just wonder if we may not experience some of that with AI.
100%.
Hot today, but boy, there's this giant sucking sound as this huge amounts of money are pouring into it. And it requires a growth rate for every single company that I would argue is not sustainable. So something to keep an eye on.
Well, that really puts us in the room. And, during that 24-hour of cash scenario, what were the first 3 decisions you made at that window that changed the course of the events?
Well, my colleague that was with me before the meeting said, Alan, we have a 2 of clubs and a 3 of spades in our hands. That's it. And I said, well, we have no choice but to be really stark, not happily, with a financial institution saying, if they didn't fund, that we would do everything in our power to share that failure to the world, and create not a goal of ours, but reputational risk for them.
100%.
Had to go down that very ugly path because our back was against the wall. Had to do that. So that's where I would answer your question.
And, if a founder, CEO, or team of directors is in that seat tomorrow where there is crisis under their house, what would you say is step 1 before anything else?
Figure out, in our case, this was figure out a game plan as to how we were going to approach this institution. We gamed it out. We went down multiple paths and ultimately settled on what seemed to be the only viable one, because they were huge and powerful, and we were at the time this little microbe, this little tiny little investment, not so little to them, but but still, compared to their overall portfolio, we were teeny weeny.
So would you say it's before doing anything else, sit down, figure out a game plan?
Yeah, and ideally for any other entrepreneurs, hopefully don't allow yourself to get in that pickle of a position. Now, at the time, from money being highly available, all the windows had closed. It was truly a frigid environment. And as a result, sadly, lots of web companies that might have succeeded failed because they couldn't get any financing. It's that herd instinct for a lot of the funders, what's hot, what's not. And like lemmings, they go to one path, like AI today. AI is absorbing pretty much tons of capital that's available for other things is all going to AI. This, 24-year-old startup or whatever.
And now, from survival mode to structural risk, let's talk about Discover. So on Discover, you uncovered a capital demand cash flow flaw. What exactly was the part that broke that you found?
Well,
on fire?
I'm going to lead into this a little bit. At the time, this is a few years ago, I was with 2 other people and we were charged with building the Discover card, which was the apple of the eye of the chairman of Sears. Sears had 26 million card members, but no merchant base for a potential new card. Now, the chairman of Sears said, Snyder, you come from the broker dealer, which I did. I want you to wear a Sears hat when you go down this path on the Discover card. Fine. So I took his advice to heart, and we were out at the Black Tower in Chicago. And this was sort of a go, no-go decision going forward. And the question was, well, how much is it going to take to build this? We said 450 million, which was not a problem. And the chairman said, okay, Snyder, I told you to keep a Sears perspective. What do you think? Now, I knew, showing how dumb I am, that he wanted to do this. And I said, well, he said, do you think we should do it? And I said, no. You could have heard a pin drop in that room, Johan. Everybody's looking like, get rid of this guy. And the chairman says to me, well, why do you say that? I said, well, Sears is the golden goose that lays the golden eggs. And every time I went out to Chicago, all anybody could talk about was this financial service thing where, you know, they wanted to build Sears World Trade, blah, blah, blah. And I said, but the merchant is funded all of this. And nobody talks about it anymore. He said, Alan, I appreciate your candor and your guts to tell me that we're going to go build the Discover card anyway. My decision. So as we set out about building it, we were what I would call a fast follower to Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch already had the CMA account. This is where you're integrating a brokerage account, a credit card, in our case, since we owned a bank account, and a money market fund, all into a single integrated execution. Now, as we started to build it, it all seemed great. We were flying along probably in the same path as Merrill had. And then all of a sudden, one of the team said, Alan, we have a problem. And the problem was the way we had followed in Merrill's footstep was there was huge cash imbalances as you move from one account to another that would have, and Merrill subsequently discovered the same thing and had to rebuild their account. Happily, we did not. You had this giant negative cash flow that as the issuing entity, you would have had to fund. It would have made for profitless prosperity. And that was an intense epiphany. Very scary at the time because it said, how the hell are you going to do this? Now, eventually we figured out how, but it was pretty terrifying at that particular moment.
I can only imagine, especially, I mean, everything was running like you were saying, like you were mentioning, everything was working well, and then this big fire comes up on the side. So what did getting cash control back look like tactically for you and your team?
Meant that we would survive. Here's what I would say the takeaway was, which I've tried to think about since then. As an intense group focusing on solving a problem, you get focused probably on all the bits and pieces as you're crafting whatever it is that you're building. And you got to occasionally, which we had failed at, pull the camera back and look at the whole enchilada and say, all right, do all these bits and pieces integrate and interlock with each other properly? Clearly, we had screwed up and didn't do that. And I would say that's, you think about starting multiple companies, that's frequently, you got to execute for sure, all the bits and pieces, they got to work, but occasionally you got to pull the camera back and say, all right, how does all of this fit together into a common fabric?
Mm-hmm.
And we had lost sight of that.
I think that's gold right there. In one of our previous conversations, we spoke about how in a company sometimes, marketing has a different, perspective or value into what a customer is. Finances has another, operations team has another. And then when we get everything together, we get different numbers from everyone. So one of the takeaways was making sure everyone knows what the goal is. One, everyone understands it. Everyone's working towards that. Everyone knows, and it's speaking the same language to make sure, like you were saying, everything interconnects at the end.
And I would say, try your damnedest to create an environment where somebody can say, holy smokes, we have a problem.
100%.
We have a problem, and don't suppress that. Let somebody say, yeah, we got a problem, and try, which is not always easy in the heat of battle, to listen.
Yeah.
That's what I would add to the thought.
And where do smart teams miss these cross-system risks, and how do you design them out early?
Trying to occasionally integrate all the bits and pieces in a group chat. In other words, I think a lesson that comes out of the tech world is try to have regular stand-up meetings of the key players.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a long meeting. It can be 30 minutes. All right, here's what we're looking at. Here's the issues, and get that cross-fertilization of people listening to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That really comes out of the tech world, and it's a great thing that tech people frequently do.
And I think, in the past two answers, you've highlighted something very important that we sometimes dismiss, and it's building relationships with trust behind it, be it with your team, with the whole company, but especially with the key individuals in your organization. So making sure they have the trust to tell you that you're wrong, like you did with Sears. Or someone having the guts to tell you, Alan, we have a big problem here.
That's right.
Because sometimes we hide from that.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, sometimes we hide from that, just being scared we're going to be fired. What are they going to think about me? But this is painting the bigger picture. Building those trust relationships where everyone feels comfortable telling you good things and bad things. Because at the end of the day, we all have that same goal of making that company grow.
I agree. Easy to say, of course. Hard to execute.
Now let's go to the highest pressure chapter. The restructuring the 20 billion under fire. So, what are the non-negotiable requirements for any CEO restructuring a 20 billion portfolio?
Well, a couple of things to put it in perspective. The name of the company was First Executive Life.
Mm-hmm.
This company was a major life insurer whose portfolio had, and this was done before I got there, had concentrated in high yield bonds. Great, high yield, but okay. Then when I parachuted in, Drexel, who had made the market, was the Mike Milken, et cetera, with the junk bond kings. They were failing. So the market on these high yield bonds tanked.
Oh my goodness.
Tanked. I'll never forget the CFO of the company came in one morning and said, Alan, we have a problem. said, oh, okay, what's the problem? He said, well, the auditors are off the reservation. In an insurance company, you don't mark to market, typically. He said the auditors want to mark the portfolio to market. This was pretty terrifying news. And I said to him, and he was very pale, sweating profusely. I said, well, what would the impact be? Scariest words I've ever heard. I'm not sure.
No.
And so the wild ride began. Now, this was not secret. This company, there was a Harvard Business School case written about it. This company was either in the New York Times, the LA Journal, or the Wall Street Journal. Every other day, there was an article for 2 years. This was the glare of public scrutiny. Now, what this triggered was, and you had to be empathetic, that the policyholders were terrified that they were going to lose all their money.
100%.
Understandably. So it didn't matter that I had just gotten there, but the insurance commissioner and myself both got death threats. I had a bodyguard, courtesy of the great state of California. I was told to never take the same path home at night, in case I was being followed. And there was a detective packing an arm on the floor that I was on to screen anybody that came in.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, okay, so you get used to it. And then all of a sudden, somebody got through the detective, landed in my office, and was hyperbolically expressing his concerns. At which point, an army of people pounded in, grabbed the guy, and then we continued a more civilized conversation, and he ultimately left. But that was the pressure that everybody was under. So it was 24/7 as you tried to restructure the portfolio, which we did ultimately. Took 7 blissful years of unwinding, restructuring high yield bonds, selling them, and doing this in the glare of the public press.
I'm out of words. That's just crazy. I can't even imagine going through any of those situations, even the hyperbolic yelling from the guests that came in. I mean, it's just all crazy. And I mean, during those 7 years, with all that noise coming from everywhere, how did you manage to stay effective and principled under all that pressure?
Well, you just had to try to set it aside. And to give you, again, everybody has a family, and I have a long-suffering spouse. And on Saturday, I was named, even though I hadn't been there when any of this went down initially, I was named in 23 lawsuits. And so Saturday mornings, the FedEx guy would come with a hand truck piled high with legal filings that had been occurring that prior week, scaring, of course, your spouse, thinking that you were never going to get out of this. So I think all you could do, all I did, was hold down, sail hard, and keep in mind, and to give you a sense of it, I can't really describe it. The FBI was involved. The Department of the Treasury was involved. The controller of the currency was involved.
Oh, wow.
And periodic would have meetings. Now, I adopted, I'd never had this experience before, a singular focus. I said, my job was to protect and do everything I could, the duty of care for policyholders. So every decision I made, I said, does this make the policyholders better or worse off?
Mm-hmm.
And this meant you were fighting with regulators who had sometimes some bizarre ideas, and you had to be open to lots of conversations. For example, we used to have, and this was, God, just so much fun, rub it all over your body. We used to have a 6 a.m. in California call with 30 state regulators.
Oh my God.
We did that for 1 year. Really fun. And of course, well, you could do this, you could do that. And you'd try to be nice and say, well, guys, I love you both, but I got to get back to work.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the environment, and that's what we did. And my only solution was not like a public company, you have shareholders, employees, etc. Here it was, did we help the policyholders as a team?
Oh, that's amazing. And did you have, or do you currently have, any personal routines that kept you steady during that storm?
Well, it sounds so obvious and maybe kind of silly, but, and athletes, I'm not a particularly great athlete, but I play tennis, singles tennis to this day. And so I think exercising regularly gets those endorphins going and forces you to think about other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Forces you. You can't, otherwise the tennis ball is going to hit you in the head or whatever, And so that, I think, was really helpful and has been helpful over the years.
I mean, yeah, that's something I recommend to everyone in every stage of their life. Exercising, I mean, it's not only, of course, healthy for you, but also mentally, like you were mentioning. It puts you in the tennis court, focused on what you're doing at the moment and not thinking about all the noise around. And it gives your mind a little break from all the craziness. So, additionally to the body wellness, there's also mental wellness happening there.
Yeah, but Johan, you can tell I've learned nothing from this journey because I continue to start companies. And as a friend of mine said to me, Alan, don't forget, with innovators trying to change the world, they're the boys and girls laying face down with an arrow in their backside. And frequently it's true, but you have to just mush forward. So you got to hold on to that concept and execute.
And that ties into the rules you've carried everywhere. So you've mentioned how hard work counts. Unfashionable, but it's true. So when did effort, not brilliance, change an outcome for you?
Oh, I think I've talked about some where, going all the way back to raise, pry that incremental $5 million out of that institution. That wasn't hard work. That was just cussedness and pursuit of an objective. Mm-hmm. And the concern, look, at the time, and a lot of this stuff, you worried about all those people that you had convinced to join your happy band. Mm-hmm. You brought them into this maelstrom. All right, you have a duty of loyalty to them as well and to existing shareholders. So I would say preparation, maybe it's having fooled around with Boy Scouts for years. It's preparation and try to anticipate stuff. You can't always change stuff, but try to anticipate it and prepare what you might do if this, that, or the other thing happens.
And I mean, we come back again to mentioning how trust and loyalty in this world, and I mean, every relationship is important. I mean, people love working with you because they trust you, and you trust them. And I think that's what's made you successful so far. You've made and built relationships of trust through hard work, through, I mean, brilliance, and through trust. So it's pretty impressive, and something that we all can learn from, every day. And be true to yourself is one of those other recommendations that you've given. What's a moment you refused the easy path and it saved you later? I know you mentioned saying no to Sears and still working and building it. But was there any other moment where you refused that easy path? And
Yeah, there have been a lot of them. I think when your private parts are in a vice and somebody is tightening that vice, it's easy to say, let me take a shortcut. Let me gild the lily. Let me dissemble. Let me not be forthright in really the situation at hand. Every investment I've made hasn't worked perfectly. It's true. Okay, but if you say, look, we screwed up here.
Yeah.
If we were as smart as we thought we were, we wouldn't have made this dumb, retarded, I can't say that, foolish investment. Okay, but hear that. Play it and say, look, I'm going to work my ass off to try to recover everything we can in this god-awful bad investment. And, I think that's important.
I mean, it speaks a lot from you, because it would be easy to show all your wins on one side. But I think it's also important to show how, when you haven't won, and what you've done to try to turn around and make it a less of a loss.
Yeah.
I think from every loss is opportunity gained. So I don't really see losses as completely a loss, because there's always something that we can learn from that.
I like that.
And if someone wanted to copy your operating standard tomorrow, what's the first habit to install?
It's pretty prosaic. Every venture capitalist looks for it. Are you bringing intensity of purpose to what you're doing? Are you, morning, noon, and night thinking about how to overcome this or that hurdle? Sometimes people get lucky and they, have some great idea and boom, it explodes. And that happens. But frequently, at least in the financial world, which is pretty much where I've played most of my career, it usually takes a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And, when I did Answer Financial, clearly in retrospect, you'd say, we were too damn early.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we ultimately became sizable, selling more auto and home in the U.S. than anybody else except for a carrier. My latest attack is a company called aShareX,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is early, but very exciting. aShareX, it's early. We said, let's democratize the investments people can make in alternative assets by fractionalizing. Fractionalizing, we just finished a white paper. If anybody listens to this and wants to get a copy of it, it's a McKinsey-like white paper on the mega trend of fractionalizing ownership of assets. It's democratizing them. It's creating an entirely new cohort of people to be able to invest in what's otherwise would only available to the ultra high net worth investor. Wow. Why not give the rest of us a chance to invest in high-end, high-quality, diversifying, maybe non-correlated assets, which is why the ultra-high net worth people buy them, whether that's music royalties, whether it's a $50 million apartment building, whether it's a Picasso, all of that stuff, a $6 million baseball card, which recently sold.
Oh, wow.
Give people a chance to participate in that and do it in a way that's better than any existing structure that's out there. That's what aShareX is trying to do. Now, the technology was the mother of all undertakings. It took us 3.5 years to create an auction system to allow people to buy a piece of one of these assets, aggregate competitively to each other all of their pieces to own the asset. And then every damn lawyer I know said, Snyder, I said, we want to create a public security. He said, oh, you'll never clear the SEC. Of course, that was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. And it took us a year of hard work to get through the SEC. And so people can get true market price discovery through an auction. Then some money manager saying, Johan, trust me, here's the price. Get a get a security offering that's approved by the SEC. Wow, regulatory oversight. And give the investor, which is atypical, control of when to sell the asset. Holy smokes, now you've done something. Now, it took us 3.5 years to build the damn thing. And we've done several auctions. It's early. And eureka, it works. God damn, it works. Now, we've done several auctions. And just for fun, I'll mention this, then I'll shut up. We're going to auction off a concourse quality Ferrari.
Wow.
That, yeah, sure, somebody can pay 250 grand plus for it, but not many people have that kind of stuff. So we're going to offer it. Somebody can participate for $2,500 to get a piece of this Ferrari that has roughly 1,300 miles on it. And I think, having participated with exotic cars, I think it's going to be a pretty damn good, attractive deal. That's my personal opinion, not a projection. But I think it's pretty interesting and it's fun. So you own a piece of it. It's stored in a climate-controlled warehouse. They rotate the tires. They do all that stuff. And then in a few years, you'll sell it.
That's amazing. So you've shared quite a bit. So I'll digress a little bit. So let's see. You worked on aShareX. So you're democratizing access to high-value assets. So everyone, and when I mean everyone, is almost everyone can access and bid on this car, own a part of it. And as you mentioned, it could be a card, a painting, baseball card, you name it. And I think that's very powerful and valuable. And for everyone interested, the Ferrari auction will happen on October 23rd. And it's open for fractional bidders from as little as $2,500. We'll link it in the show notes below. And can you tell us, how did that idea come to mind? What was that aha moment that where you said, hey, we need this, let's build it?
You're going to properly accuse me of being selfish. Having been an investor in various alternative assets, typically the structures used are a Reg D offering, which is exempt from the SEC. Money manager says, Alan, this $50 million apartment building is worth $50 million. And I would say, why? And they would say, because I'm telling you so, you can diligence it. I said, but what is it worth today? And they said, well, it'll be worth what somebody's willing to pay. Second, in a Reg D offering, typically a money manager says, Alan and Johan, I know you'll take this to heart. Trust me. We will know when to sell this, and we will have your best interest at heart. And during the time that they hold it, they're charging me or you as the investor 1.5% to 2% a year in management fees. Now, Homo economicus, right? What does that mean? It frequently that hold period gets extended.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, why not give that power to the investor? Get SEC oversight on the offering. And so that's what we've done. And we're endless use cases for what we built. I'm sure there are others that can use our tech stack better, faster than us. True. We would white label it or do a SaaS execution. That's fine. We will do it like on the Ferrari and other stuff that's coming down the pike. So there you go.
And do you have any other exciting auctions coming in?
Well, I don't want to pre-announce them until they're all locked in, but yes, we have others. Several music companies have talked to us about auctioning off a catalog of songs.
Oh, wow.
And, you think about fan clubs. You think about, I'll give you another one that's really fascinating. Do you play sports?
Yeah.
Yes, you said you do. Okay. There's something called an income share deal, which this vehicle we've put together is almost ideal for. You have some high-end athlete, let's say a soccer player, football, or somebody clocking along, maybe making $1 million or north of $1 million a year. And they say, gee, I want to go buy a house. So why don't I sell 30% of my income to a group of investors for the next 3 years and monetize that so I can buy my house while I'm cooking along? Those are called income share deals. It's happening in the sports world. It's happening with influencers.
Mm-hmm.
And aShareX has a structure that's more efficient than what is out there today. And I believe fairer for the seller of the asset, their income. So stuff like that.
I mean, that's you're opening up the doors not only to everyone that could invest, but to a lot of interests, different interests. Because I might be interested in paintings, but my wife might be interested in investing in a fan club or anything else. So, I mean, that's even crazy to think about. It's pretty fascinating.
I'll give you one. You mentioned my wife's from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Of course, you think of the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are owned by the people that live in Green Bay.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh.
So why not? And they're loyal fans. So why not take a team and peel off 2% of that shareholders and use aShareX to sell it to the fans? Now you have fans that are more loyal. You have a price for the team. Wow, you've really done something useful, like Green Bay did.
I mean, you're, like you said, you're taking the seller's interest, investor's interest into consideration, and not like in the platforms that we usually see, where it almost feels like I'm losing something when trying to do an investment. So, I mean, this is pretty much a game changer. Yeah, and no control. Exactly. It's been heavily regulated, and it's been done the same for years and decades. So, I mean, this is a pretty nice game changer, and super fascinating to learn more about it. So that was the last question on our segment. And let's wrap it with a quick lightning round. So let's go over that. And the first question is, what's the most overrated founder hack?
I don't know what you mean by that, Johan. What do you mean by founder hack?
So like if someone wanted to start up a company tomorrow, and if you read some of the founding some books on how to do startups and whatever, sometimes there's one recommendation that always it's always there, but it's not particularly the most important as you're starting it up, and that could be, in this instance, around AI, for example.
Right.
So we could rephrase it to, what's the most overrated founder tool out there?
Boy. I'm going to turn it into a positive. I think instead of overrated, I'm going to say surround yourself positively with people that will question you in a positive way, and say, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And be like, here's the thing. Remember, be like Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. Years ago, they had this challenge. They had to paint the damn white fence. So what did they do? They recruited lots of people to help them paint the fence. And starting a young company, recruit everybody you can to help you along the way. So I'm going to give you a positive instead of.
I love it. What's the most underrated signal of a great CEO under pressure?
It's interesting. It's easy to be critical, but I would look at the recent Cracker Barrel.
100%.
Cracker Barrel challenges. I'm sure they did research, but then I would, not to be critical of the CEO, but at least in the early comments that were made, they seemed inappropriate at times, and disconnected with the reaction that was gotten. Hard to have predicted the reaction, yes, but then didn't really lean into them. And you compare that versus years ago when you had Tylenol. Remember when people were opening it up, there wasn't a cap to lock it down. There, the CEO, oh my God, just went everywhere saying, here's what we're going to do. Maybe we should have done it sooner. Woe is me. And went through that and actually created a very positive brand experience.
100%.
So those are two.
And one thing boards should stop asking CEOs to do.
Well, be careful of busy work. Be careful. Usually there's so much to be done and there's never enough time to do it. I would say be careful of busy work. That's not going to move the needle. That's what I would say.
And last question, one book, podcast, or resource you recommend in general. So let's do a two-part question in general, and two first-time founders or someone trying to build a business.
Well, having had the good fortune to work with people younger than me, now everybody, damn it, is almost younger than me, but I say to, young founders or young people entering the financial space, for sure, not so much a book. I would say It sounds so silly, but read the Wall Street Journal every day. Now, a lot of it doesn't apply to whatever you're working on, but read the experiences that others are having and try to lift out of those experiences. What did they do that was brilliant? What did they do that maybe wasn't so brilliant? And think about that, and you'll have a broad exposure, and that'll make you more sensitive to things that happen. So that's what I would say.
Love it. Now we'll go through the summary and we'll do the guest promo in the closing. So from our conversation, there are two big takeaways today. Crises reveal systems, whether it's a 24 hours of cash or $20 billions under pressure. Designing out failure and holding values steady is the difference. And then the second one, access is changing. So platforms like aShareX with the fractional Ferrari auctions from 2,500 show how innovation makes private markets more open and fair. So, Alan, where should people go first? aShareX.com to check out the Ferrari auction, or is there any other channel to connect with you directly?
Two things. If somebody wants this McKinsey-like white paper, the fractionalization is the new mega trend. If anybody wants a copy of that, great. It's the most detailed review of the space I've seen anywhere. It took forever to write it. That's one. Two, I would say aShareX, check it out. Look at the auction, look at what's being offered in the Ferrari and the company itself. I think those two things are probably the most immediate.
Perfect. So we'll make sure to link those in the show notes. And Alan, I really thank you for being here with us today. It was an outstanding talk.
Oh, you say that to all the girls, Johan.
And we appreciate for taking us inside the rooms where, leadership under fire really happens. To everyone listening, check out aShareX.com. We'll link it in the show notes along with ways to reach Alan. And if you're interested in that white paper, let us know and we can share that with you. And if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with one founder who's facing pressure right now. I'm Johan Mejia. This is the Enhanced AI Partners Podcast. See you next time.